So I was going to say welcome to the spring version of this month in Teams, but it's really not spring here. It's snowing. But I do have my spring background, so I'm ready for spring. So welcome everyone to the next installment of this month in Microsoft Teams. My name is Tim Homan. I'm a project manager with Peters and Associates. And one of the areas I've been tasked with is becoming the subject matter expert for Microsoft Teams, which is a moving target because it's changing almost daily. So this month in Microsoft Teams is a monthly series that looks at Teams functionality and new features as they are added. Additionally, I try to add in tips and tricks where I can. So let's get started with Teams governance. So the first thing I just want to bring up is why are we using the GoToMeeting platform? So the decision was made well over a year ago. And at that time, Teams really didn't have a developed platform for this type of meeting. They had live meetings, which is a one-to-many, but it really doesn't handle registrations and those kinds of things. It's difficult to demo Teams when you're using Teams to present. I actually logged out of my normal Teams account so I could do my demo stuff. But good news is that Teams is adding a webinar option to the Teams platform, which is coming in May. And it's going to include registration and all the same capabilities. So we're using GoToMeeting to present Teams, and it is what it is. So our agenda for today is pretty simple. I like to start these out with just an overview of Teams, just so that everyone's on the same page. They understand, what the platform is and kind of why we're having these webinars. And then the focus today is governance. So I'll do some slides and talk about some of the options, and then we'll jump out and demo some of these things. And then, we'll leave some time at the end if anybody has any questions. So a new slide that I've added recently and just kind of really sets the stage for Teams and all the things it can do. So imagine a world where you can have your meetings, your chat, incorporate your phone calls, share files, collaborate real time, not eliminate email, but reduce your email. A lot of integration now between Outlook and Teams. Third-party applications like to-do lists, things that are really impactful and simple to set up. Dashboards, so you can monitor, KPIs and other things. And all of this is in one application. So it's Teams, and you can tie all these different things in. It keeps you more productive, helps you collaborate, all in one location. So you don't have to leave that app to be productive. So a little different way of looking at the same kind of information, It's emailing and scheduling. So your Outlook calendar is your Teams calendar. They're the same thing. There's now a button in Outlook, which is share to Teams, and there's a button in Teams, which is share to Outlook. So it makes it super easy to send information back and forth. It's built on top of SharePoint, so the file sharing and content creation, all that is just superb. It really excels in that area. Meetings, again, one place to go to store your files and have your meetings. If you take it to the next level where we are with phone calls, it's just super convenient. You install the Teams app on your cell phone and now it's your business phone. Super flexible, and it's basic. It's a chat application. But again, you're incorporating all these same things into one application, which just helps you connect across your organization. So what is our role in the Teams environment? We are, this is our implementation wheel, I guess you could call it. We're really focusing with these webinars in the envisioning and readiness area. Today, specifically, we're targeting governance. And it's really, I think, the key to a successful rollout is having the governance conversation before you get too far down your rollout. So, we do some envisioning, we talk about governance, and then we help you with your adoption and implementation. So just kind of a high level of all the services we can offer to help you get Teams rolled out in your organization. So just some more background, why are we doing this? So over the last year, Teams daily use has grown by 100 million daily users. So it's Microsoft's most active product at this point. So they're putting a lot of resources into it, developing a lot of features. When it rolled out, there were 50,000 organizations using it. Now that's over 500,000, and then 91 of the Fortune 100 companies are using Microsoft Teams. So, this is really what drove this series is the new features. So, what my chart is showing here is it's not stopping. There's already 87 new features announced to be released in Q2 of this year. These numbers are a little misleading because it's just a cumulative number. So if it's a feature that's released for the desktop, the web, Android, and iOS, it's gonna show up 4 times. But what it's showing is that they're not slowing down. So new features are being released on a regular basis, and it just makes the product better and just more use cases with all the functionality they're adding. So today's topic is going to be governance. One, I guess, disclaimer before we get into it is this is not intended to be a training. It's really just a high-level overview. And I guess a shameless plug for myself is I can do all of these types of presentations for your organization. I just did a governance one the other day, and it was just 3 people from an organization. We had a whole conversation around governance and their deployment of Teams to help them, get started. They'd already kind of rolled it out, and now they're trying to catch up a little bit and roll things back a little. So again, anything that you've seen, any kind of training in Teams, we're happy to provide that for you. So these are the topics I'm going to discuss around governance. And it's really about the Teams sites, because that's really where most of your data goes. So it's the creation of sites, the expiration of sites. What features do you want to enable in your organization? And then what can we do, right? After we've got sites created and we've got data out there, how do we control that data with something like data loss prevention? And then we'll demo some of these things and then save a little time for some questions. So I think what's really important is to understand where your data is in Teams. And what's ironic is that none of it is in Teams. It's all stored somewhere else. So chats end up in Exchange. Files are stored in SharePoint or in OneDrive. So if it's you're sharing a file in a chat, the file gets stored in OneDrive and the chat gets stored in Exchange. So what that provides, though, is a whole bunch of tools to control that data. So on the far right here, right, is the whole list of things that are traditional Office 365 tools, and you can leverage all of these to protect your Teams information. So, right, it's Exchange. If you record a meeting, it goes to stream. The Teams sites are actually based on Azure Active Directory groups, SharePoint, OneDrive, so all those different areas. Why do we need to worry about this? So what we did was we put together a list of things that you should be thinking about when you're rolling out your Teams. Sprawl is the first. So by default, anyone that can create a group in Azure Active Directory can create a team site. By default, that's everyone. And if you don't have something in place before you start, you're going to have people just creating sites left and right, and you're going to have team sprawl. How do you control that? So you can set up expiration dates. As these people are creating these sites, do you have some kind of a naming convention, right? By default, again, Teams lets you have duplicate names. Makes things really confusing, right? because we have 3 sites with the same name, and I don't know which one is the right site. Right off the bat, guest access. So if you want people outside your organization, I'm not talking anonymous users in a meeting. I'm talking about a user from another organization being given access to a team site in your organization where they can access files and post right in the chat and do all those kinds of things. So there's a whole set of admin settings just for guest access. Third-party apps. I checked this morning, we're up to 985 third-party apps available in Teams. So the great piece is that there's probably an app that you're using for something else in your organization that's available in Teams. But if you don't control who has access to deploy those, people are going to be integrating data with apps and sharing your information outside your organization. So, even the simple things that are built in, like owners, creators, members, do you have a handle on how that works for a team site? And then finally, mobile. So all this data that's available in Teams is available in the Teams mobile app. And do you want to control how that information is disseminated? So it's really easy, if I'm in Teams and I have Snapchat or some other app on my phone to kind of get information from one area to another. So you can do things like disabling the ability to take screenshots in Teams. So how do we control all this? So here's a list of tools that are available that can control all the things on the previous slide. So the ability to archive a site. It doesn't, you're not deleting it, you're not expiring it, you're putting it into an archive state where it's not visible, but the data is still there and you can still search it and interact with it. Do you have compliance rules in your organization? How are you going to find information that's in Teams? So e-discovery. Something as simple as a moderator. So who can post to a team site? By default, anyone can post. Do you want to control that and have it go through a moderator first? The list of allowed applications that I had mentioned, data loss prevention. So I actually, in my demo, have a rule set up that prevents you from sharing social security numbers or credit card numbers in a chat. And it's really kind of protecting people from themselves, right? I don't think people intentionally want to put your organization at risk, but they just may not realize. I'm chatting with another person in my organization, they need some information, and it's just the easiest way to share it. Didn't realize that this team site had guest access, and now somebody from outside my organization can get in and see that information. So a lot of options there. So first area is creation. And here we're talking just simply creating a team site. Who can do that? And what kind of rules are in place to control what that site is named? So here's just a picture from my demo site where I have the HR site, I have the human resources site, and the official HR site. Which one, is HR? I have no idea. And then below that, we have the 2 retail sites. It can be anything, but named exactly the same thing because in the background, this is an Azure Active Directory group, and it has a group ID. And that's how Microsoft can distinguish one site from another because they use the group ID. But that wouldn't be helpful to you if it was the group ID posted here. So how do you control that? Something simple like a prefix or a suffix. And so in my environment, I set up the department name is the prefix. So it's a simple thing to set up, but if you don't have these things in place before you start, you end up with a mess like this. So, it's decision time. So we need to come up with a naming convention. At the same time, we can do some things like classifications. In my demo, I did internal, external, confidential and highly confidential. And doing simple things like that will allow you down the road to control how data is shared. So if I have an internal only site, I may be okay sharing social security numbers. But if it's external or highly confidential, then I certainly don't. And you can set different rules up based on those classifications. And guest access is a lot more involved than just clicking the box in the Teams admin console. You have to have guest access in Azure Active Directory and SharePoint. So there's a lot more that needs to go into that. And there's a whole set of options for what guests can do in your organization. And so you need to kind of review all these things and come up with a plan. Expiration is our next topic, and it's one of the easiest ways to control Teams sprawl, I would say. So my recommendation is, right, set up a expiration for all your team sites for 365 days. So once a year, the owners of the team site will get an email at 30 days, at 15 days, and at 1 day, and all they have to do is click the button and their site is renewed. And that's one reason why you recommend 2 owners per site, so that if one owner leaves your organization, the other owner will still get that email. And it's going to kind of self-clean up. So if you had set up a site just to play around and do some demo stuff, and you're right, okay, I'm kind of done with that, I'm not using it anymore, in a year, it's going to expire, and you don't have to worry about it. The other way is really, it kind of stifles the creativity and I think the excitement, and it slows the implementation process, and that would be only letting IT create sites. And that's one option. But if you train people and give them the basic tools and knowledge that they can create sites and do the proper settings, it's going to help get the ball rolling in your organization and get teams taking off. So again, a decision point, expiration date, how do you want to control that? In my demo, I said 60 days because I wanted to see it in action, and I wasn't going to wait a year. And you can just pick if you want all sites or a subset of sites, so you have some options there. And then you can also use data retention. So even if a site gets deleted, you can have a data retention rule in place that's going to preserve that information. And then finally, archiving. And archiving puts your site into an archive state, so it's not deleted, it's not expired. The information's still accessible, and that's something users can do themselves. So a little training there, best practice, and just let people, so when the project's over, we're going to archive the site, but we'll still have access to that information. Here's an example of what a site looks like that has expired or is going to expire. So under the settings of the site, you can just click the Renew Now button, and that site will be renewed for whatever your retention policy is, 60, 90 days, 365, whatever. And then this is an example of what the email looks like. And so my HR site is set to expire. All I have to do is click that button, and now my site has been renewed. So the next discussion area is around the features available within Teams. And so, the core areas are the Teams and channels, chat, document storage, meetings, audio conferencing. You can control who has access to all of those features. And so it may be that you're an organization that has part-time employees, and you want them to be able to access team sites because that's where we're sharing information, but you don't want them to be able to chat, right? Because it's just not a function of their job, it's more a distraction. So you can create specific policies to control things like that. I had one company that wanted anyone that dialed into an audio conference. So it's a Teams meeting that has dial-in capabilities. They didn't want them to have to put a PIN number in to get into the meeting. And so created a custom policy just for a subset of users where that option was disabled. And so if you called in, you just got right into the meeting. So, right, another decision point here. So what features do you want? And do you want to control that for your tenant? So everyone has these features, or a subset. So just these certain users have access to these features or don't have access. And then at the same time, I need to find a place for third-party apps. So it kind of fit in here because this is really Teams admin console settings. By default, right, all apps are available to all users, and there's 985. Next week will probably be over 1,000. So big picture, right? How do we do this? So, right, we document. So we have a meeting, we talk about all these things, we look at your company policies, and then we come up with, right, how we're gonna name, what are we gonna do for expiration, right, classifications, guest access. We're gonna document all that, we're gonna create a plan on how we're gonna implement it, and then we're gonna communicate that out to our users so that they're not surprised when they start creating a site and they're seeing their department name in front of it, or when they get this email that says your site's about to expire. So that is how we do it. So that was, the first part was really kind of what you need to do. This next part kind of focuses on how, right? How do you do these things? And so security and compliance is a big part of Azure and Office 365. And these are just some of the tools that you can use in that environment to control teams. So e-discovery, something that I used to do a lot in my previous life as a IT person in a school setting. Freedom of Information Act was a word I still dread to this day, because in a school setting, pretty much any information you have can be FOIA'd, and you have to produce that. And so I did a lot of searches, and specifically through email. But if you have data in a Teams environment and you want to discover it, e-discovery is a way to do it. It'll search through email and team sites and chats and all that and let you find what's out there. Data loss prevention we talked about. Again, in my previous life, I created a data loss prevention rule because people were in the habit of sending social security numbers through email. And so I set a rule up that would just send me an email anytime it happened, and then we could have a conversation of why you shouldn't do that. We went to electronic W-2s, and so teachers would all get their W-2, download it, and email it to their spouse so they could do their taxes. Like, you're sending your W-2 in an unencrypted email with just all your information in it. So it's really not something you should do. Again, how do you manage all these settings when it comes to mobile devices? So there are tools built in where you can control, again, like I had mentioned, the ability to take a screenshot of your Teams application so that you could control how data is retained in your organization. And last, this isn't really a Teams thing, but it's an important, right? Multi-factor authentication. It's just, at this point, a must. Simple to do, no reason not to. Built in again to Office 365. We have a MFA in a day where we can help get you started. If someone got a hold of your phone and you don't have multi-factor authentication set up and they can get into Teams and get access to that data, it would be devastating to your organization. So simple way to control that. So this is kind of my summary slide. It just really wraps everything up in one graphic here. So start with, right, a naming convention, prefix, suffix. So if you're a multi-location organization, you could have location as a suffix. So it could be department, the name of the site, and the suffix could be the location. You could even upload a list of blocked words. So again, I think maybe saving people from themselves. So if they don't put something goofy in a team site, options, I can show you where you can find those. Who can do this? So by default, anyone that can create a group in Azure Active Directory can create a team site. So you need to plan that out, right? You can create a security group and only allow them and add people to that as they've been trained and brought up to speed. Expiration, something you should have in place before you get started so people are used to that and expect it. So that they know in a year I'm going to have to renew this site if I'm using it, or just let it expire if I'm not. Guest access, again, tons of settings there. So multiple places to configure guest access and multiple settings to control what guests can access. Policies, right? These are really Office 365 policies, but they can be applied toward teams. So retention, new discovery, data loss. Templates, not really a governance thing, but a super useful thing. So let's say you're trying to deploy teams in your environment and you want to create sites for your different departments. You can create one site, get it configured the way you want, get people using it, make all the changes you want. It's really the channel structure, applications that you might be incorporating, and then you can use that as a template to create other sites. So it's super useful to get teams deployed and have some consistency to it. And then finally, there's a lot of different options to monitor all these things. So there's a Teams Admin Center. There's actually a Power BI dashboard. It's really Office 365 utilization, but what I look at is Teams utilization. So a whole bunch of different pieces in there that will let you see what's going on in your Teams environment. All right, so that is my PowerPoint. Let's demo some of this stuff here. So first thing I want to just show quickly is the expiration. Of course, it's been too long. I'm going to have to log back in. All right. Okay. So here is Azure Active Directory, and I'm looking at the groups area and expiration. And it's really straightforward to set this up. So, I want 365 days. Who's going to be the contact for any group that doesn't have an owner? And groups here is referring to an Azure Active Directory group, but that's what team sites are based on. And so just a default user there. And do you want all of your sites or a selected set of sites? So I just did a custom. I did 60 days, and I just put a few sites here just to test it out, because if I put all my sites in there, I don't use this enough. This will be a lot of work to get everything back the way I had it. So simple, but super powerful. And then just a note on expiration. So even after a group has expired, it's a soft delete, and you have 30 days after the group has been deleted to recover it. So even, you get 30-day notice, 15, 1-day notice, you still have another 30 days after that to get it back. Next area, since we're here, is naming. So if we look at naming, the first area here is where you can upload a list of blocked words. But this is my policy here, where I have department and then underscore and then group name. So that's how I have mine configured. And so I can show you what that looks like. I'll create a site. So I'm going to join a create team. I'm going to create a team. And now here's where you can create a team from an existing team, or now Microsoft has some pre-defined templates that you can use that have some stuff that could help you get started. So I'm going to do it from scratch. I'm gonna make it private so only people I invite can join it. Ugh. And it's not working. Oh, there it is. So maybe because I was on that other screen making changes. So even before I put the name in here, you can see how the R and D has popped up here because I'm in the research and development department where this user is. So I'm going to create a team site for the Aqua Titanium project, and it's going to be called R&D underscore Aqua Titanium project. And I'm just going to make the description the same. And I'm not going to add any users right now. And so now here's my new site. I'll make this a little bigger. And so it automatically added the R&D to it, which is super useful because, right, the way team sites are handled is you just drag and drop to organize them. So there's really no organization to it, but at least if you had that, you would know what department it was and would kind of help you group things. So while we're here, let's look at classification. So if I come back to this site and say edit, I created these classifications here, and these are the ones I came up with. So internal, external, confidential, highly confidential. So this is going to be confidential because it's a new project we're working on, and I don't want anybody outside the organization to have access to it. So, it's a simple thing to do. At the time, it was PowerShell based. So to create those choices, you had to do some PowerShell. At some point, it may be incorporated into Teams Admin Console, but it isn't there yet. So I guess just let me quickly jump over here and show you. So when it comes to guest access, if we look at organization-wide settings, guest access, so not only do you have to turn it on, but then you have to make decisions on all of these other areas. So just enabling guests doesn't check all the boxes you need. Do you want them to be able to make calls using the Teams application? Do you want them to be able to share their information, doing Meet Now? All these are core functionality of the Teams application, but do you want guests to be able to have that same functionality? Do you want them to be able to edit messages that have been sent or delete messages or any of this information here? So there's a bunch of choices to make there. So in terms of features, it's kind of the same thing, right? We have a lot of choices here as to how we want to control. These are just basic settings, but we could come into each of these areas like meetings. So if I look at meeting policies, we'll see my audio conference without PIN. So I created a special policy here under meetings to disable a feature, which required you to use a PIN when you join a meeting. So again, I think at one point there were 100 different settings here in the admin center, and I'm sure that has gone up. So let me show you what it looks like when you archive something. So if I do a search, so here's my user logged in with the desktop app, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do a search. Oh, it's already a press release. And so no messages mention press release. I'm sure there's no people, but there are files. And so here's a file, and it's in the Digital Initiatives Public Relations Teams site. So if I go to Teams, I'm not going to see that site. It's not up here on the top, and it's not in my hidden either. But that file is accessible. So if I want to find that site, I come down here to settings, and then down here at the bottom, I have 2 sites that are archived, and one of them is the Digital Initiatives Public Relations site. So I could come over here and unarchive it, right? Restore it back to where it was. But what that shows is the content is there, searchable, and I can interact with it. It just, nothing's going to get changed. So it's kind of it's in an archive state. So let me show you my data loss prevention just real quick. And so these are just some of the policies that I have set up. And I think it might be this one, because I waited too long. Oh, here we go. Oh, so what this policy is, it's personally identifiable information, and where it's being applied is Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams chat and channel messages. So there's a lot of built-in, right, templates here, and then you just want to make sure you understand what they are and where you can apply them. So I'll show you what it looks like. And so we copy some information here and jump back over. And let's go under here. And so I'm going to post in my Mark 8 project team under the design area, new conversation. Please order a laptop for the Mark 8 project. Here's my information. So my social security number and my credit card information. So it takes a minute for the policy to go through. And what's funny is when I first started testing this, so my message was blocked. I was doing things with social security number where I was using 111-11-1111, and it's smart enough to know that's not a real correct social security number. So I had to come up with some better fake numbers. But again, protecting people from themselves, right? We don't want people posting social security numbers in chats. And you have options. So there are thresholds. If you see it once, let it go. If you see it 10 times, stop it. You could let it go and notify someone. If I click on what can I do, you can report it. That's the only option I'm giving them. Depending on who you are and what your policy is, you could let them override it. But I'm not letting that happen here. So that was it. So there's a lot. It's more a lot of settings and conversations, not a lot of demo in this governance area. So those are the things I had to talk about. The stuff I had to demo. Check my notes real quick. Yeah, that's everything I had. So any questions at this time? Tuesday is this month in cybersecurity, where Bruce gives his monthly talk on everything in the cybersecurity world. After that, we have a CMMC webinar, which is something new for us that we're really just starting to get rolling. And then next month is going to be this month in Teams, where I'm going to cover some of the Microsoft applications that you can use within Teams. So forms and to-do and whiteboard. So that's what is coming up. Here's our contact information. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next month.